I just wanted to give you a little background on the Male Initiative program first and let you know a little bit about who we are and why we're here. But I do want to welcome you. Thank you for coming. I know we have just few in number. We have a few people coming in a little while, some classes and things that are coming up. But in the meantime, we don't want to wait too long. But I want to welcome each of you here tonight. We have a powerhouse panel that will be talking about our theme this year, which is from the invisible male to the visible man, how we move from the sidelines to the playing field in American society. This is a very important topic and subject, I think, and I think one that warrants a very honest and open discussion, and that's what we'll have tonight. You're going to hear from our presenters, and then they're going to open the floor up at the end for a little Q&A. And I know that some people already have asked if they can ask certain questions, and they will be able to do that at the end. But in the meantime, we want to, at this time, I'm going to first tell you the New York College Male Initiative Program is part of the Black Male Initiative Program of the City University of New York. And that is a program that reaches every campus, and it is a program that is now about to engulf on its 6th year. And we are proud to be part of that program for it going on our 6th year as well. And this is why this is our 5th annual conference. And I'm going to introduce now our moderator for this evening's conference, who is no stranger to York College, but also a friend of mine. He's an absolute staunch supporter of the BMI program. He is someone who, in all honesty, is one of the main reasons why the BMI program is as successful as it is because of his leadership and his stick-to-itiveness, his ability to galvanize people, and his work at Medgar Evers campus. Because in all reality, the work at Medgar Evers that Paul Washington and Larry Martin, as well as President Edison Jackson, have done is the reason why this program exists. And so we want to be able to share. I think of Medgar as our sister campus. And so we want to be able to share with them today. And I've asked him to come and moderate. And I've actually gone to their campus and moderated a conference as well. So we're kind of like reciprocating that gesture. So at this time, I would like us to please, those of us who are here, put our hands together for our Brother Paul Washington.
Thank you, Brother Jonathan. Your words are always gracious and kind. First of all, I'd like to thank you for coming here. This is not only a packed powerhouse conference in which you're going to hear from our elders talk about the need and necessity of us getting involved, not only politically, but to understand the world and expand our worldview. As he said, I'm a representative from Medgar Evers College, and we at the Men's Development Empowerment Center, we use that center to galvanize young black men or men of color, one, to recruit, to retain, and graduate them in higher education, because we've seen that without higher education, your means of social mobility will become naught. Although we have some great entrepreneurs who didn't go to college, but we want to encourage young black men to do that. As you know, there is a crisis in our community of what's taking place with black men and men of color. If it was in any other community, if it was in a white community of a crisis such as this existing, it will be called a national emergency. So the Black Male Initiative, located on 19 campuses, emanated or came out of the vision of Dr. Edison O. Jackson, which manifests itself on various campuses in many formations, such as mentoring, such as a fatherhood initiative, such as the STEM program, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine. So it manifests itself on different levels at different campuses. Here and at Medgar Evers, we try to use those various programs to organize and mobilize and to politicize our young black men to pursue higher education. First of all, I think we need to give acknowledgement to not only our panel, but to the work and to the vision of Jonathan Quash. Let's give a round of applause for Jonathan Quash. Without further ado, we're going to bring up our presenters because I'm sure that you're ready to take notes and to open up your mind, to listen to these individuals who have a long history of engagement in the movement for social justice and self-determination, and also to encourage you. And these individuals have a long resume in terms of education from K to 12 and in higher education. But before I do that, I want to read a letter of acknowledgement. As you know, the BMI is funded through the City Council. For the last 6 years, the BMI received a sum of $2.6 million each year to divvy up to these 19 campuses to address the need of various black men in our society. And also they deal with the formerly incarcerated. We deal with reentry programs. So we work along with the City Council and the other side, which is we work with the mayor's office. And we received a letter from the mayor, and I'd like to read it. Dear friends, it is a great pleasure to welcome everyone to the 5th Annual Men's Conference hosted by the York College Male Initiative Program. New York is proud to be a city where men and women of all backgrounds can pursue their dreams. And this conference is a terrific occasion to reflect on and renew our commitment to expanding opportunities for men of all ages throughout the 5 boroughs and beyond. The efforts of the spiritual leaders, business people, and activists gathered here have already helped to improve the lives and futures of so many. Together, we look forward to examining the issues that men face during these challenging times and exploring new ways to give them the resources and support they need to reach the high standards necessary to thrive in today's world. On behalf of the City of New York, I commend today's panelists and all the members of the York College Male Initiative Program for their support of its vital mission. Please accept my best wishes for a productive conference and continued success. Mayor Michael Bloomberg. So we like to thank him. I didn't say vote for him, but I think it's critical that we thank him for his effort in helping us secure the monies necessary to have the Black Male Initiative and make it a continued success. So let's give a round of applause for the letter we received from Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Without further ado, we're going to invite our panelists up here. The first one is Malik Corbett. Malik Corbett is a serial entrepreneur, strategist, and business advisor who grew up in New York City. Malik was an outstanding athlete in high school and college. He attended Hofstra University on an athletic scholarship after graduating Nassau County Community College. Malik graduated from Hofstra University with a BS in sociology. He then played in an arena football league for several years before becoming program coordinator and acting director at the Police Athletic League, Foster Laurie Center in Hollis, Queens. After 3 years in the nonprofit sector, Malik ventured in corporate America, working for J.P. Morgan Chase and Bloomberg Financial LP for 5 years. Malik always dreamt of becoming an entrepreneur and started many successful business ventures in sports, specific training, multimedia, marketing, music, and entertainment. He has served on the board of 100 Black Men Incorporated of Long Island and Joshua and Caleb Ministries Incorporated. He is dedicated to serving his community as well as developing and inspiring entrepreneurial leaders to have an impact on the undeserved communities across America. Malik resides with his wife and daughter in Long Island. Without further ado, let's give a round of applause for Brother Malik Corbett.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? I'm going to use my 15 minutes wisely before I get shot down. As I was preparing for today, I remember how I felt as a spectator at these types of events. Sometimes I felt belittled. After I wrote, or I started writing, I considered the complexities of the issues facing African Americans. It was actually hard to put into words the passion I have for our community without, well, coming across uppity. It was difficult because I hoped to address some of the acute problems within our community, but I remember being young and hearing what some of our elders had to say about some of these problems and feeling like they fell short of meaningful solutions. I'm not here to deceive myself or falsely convince anyone here that I'm some sort of elite or great scholar. But I do have a strong desire to express the passion I have to see Black people free from modern-day bondage, oppression, and limitations. The title of this year's annual Male Initiative Conference caught my eye immediately, From the Invisible Man to the Visible Man. It made me think of Ralph Ellison's book, The Invisible Man. In it, he describes himself as a sort of ghost-like character and said that the walking dead did not even notice him. Although many statistics are still very depressing and, like Ellison's statement, make us focus on the invisible man, I actually believe that there has been some true positive changes. Many of us honor the lives of those that were taken so that we can get where we are today. People like Dr. King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, and so many others. So many freedom fighters laid their lives down for not only the advancement of our community, but for our nation. Their efforts were not in vain and made the way for numerous opportunities for the invisible man to truly be a new man. So in my opinion, the problem is not what we should do, but what has taken, my opinion, the problem is not what we should do, because what has already taken place. The current issue is what now? Many of us have not been able to discern that there is a season of transition for this new man, and with that transition comes new and different obstacles. The transition also requires a new direction. Unfortunately, some of us are still working with a stale mindset. Some of the issues that our people face are still being approached with the same tactics that the past generations have used, and they're not working. Let me give you an example. During the Civil Rights Movement, among many issues was the fight for our rights for not to be segregated, to have the same opportunities in education, work, etc. The approach then was assimilation, or getting our people the same of what other ethnic groups had with regard to opportunities. At that time, progress was definitely made. Now, inequality is still a major issue in our communities, but there are many who still are approaching these issues of inequality with the same strategies as before. This time, it's not working because today, the inequalities don't have the same faces that the invisible man face. So the new man needs a new strategy to combat the struggles. Instead of strategies of assimilation, empowerment, in my opinion, would be a better answer. The attitudes of getting our people the same that others have should change to educating ourselves to have power over our own communities and with regards to education, politics, economic development. But some of our elders and our youth do not see eye to eye, so we end up fighting each other instead of making progress towards an equally desired outcome. As we continue the same arguments amongst ourselves, our communities suffer the same oppressions, but with a new face. Poverty has ascended within our communities like never before. 1 in 4 African Americans live in poverty as of 2009. That's 9.9 million African Americans. Considering the correlation between underprivileged education and poverty, there is no surprise that our community suffers the evil cycles of poverty. Statistics show that 28%, that's 28% of African American males are in college, much lower than the white males, and that 10% of African Americans are in prison. And the statistics become more disparaging as analysts by the Bureau of Justice reports that 32%, I say that's 32%, of black males born in 2001 can expect to spend some time in prison over the course of their lifetime. Let me remind you, which I probably don't have to, we only make up 14% of the population. The myriad of problems that African American communities face today does not stop there. Other problems prevail, such as broken family structure, an inapt education system, crime, and the proliferation of gangs, which was predominantly seen as a problem in LA and Chicago. But now it plagues most African American inner city communities. There's also a lack of cohesive economic and political infrastructure in our communities, although the pieces and mechanisms do exist to build an infrastructure. So now that I've identified some of the complex problems which many of us can so eloquently articulate, what about the solutions? As I see it, there isn't a silver bullet to the problems in our community, but I will lay out 6 areas of power that Black America must attack in a unified way. Those areas are morality, partnership, family, education, political empowerment, and economic empowerment. Let me briefly address these areas before my closing. Morality. When I say morality, I don't mean a religious belief, tradition, or standard. But what I mean when I say morality is the behavioral conduct that differentiates intentions, decisions, and actions between those that are right and wrong. In other words, robbing someone or killing is a universal wrong no matter what color or creed. And it is immoral because it goes against the universal right of human beings to exist. So when I say morality, I mean that there must be an intention, decision, and action to cooperate with one another to create vibrant, creative, and prosperous communities. Now, partnership, this is very powerful because the principle of partnership is to apply the morality we just described to a collaboration of people to empower one another and create a successful community. Partnership in a successful community understands that engaging in transactions within the community benefit the community and everyone in it. True partnership is also able to conduct business with confidence that all parties will be equally responsible and morally invested in all endeavors. Now, family. According to statistics from 2002, 48% of African American homes are led by single parents. When the family is broken, there's a higher risk for poverty, there's a lack of positive role models, and children develop emotional issues because of the absence of a mother and father. What is more disheartening is the lack of fathers and positive male role models within our community. This is where the local religious institutions and social organizations such as the 100 Black Men can have a huge impact. It is imperative that these organizations begin to have more than an effort in building up our young men, not criticizing or badgering them in an unproductive way. What is called for are initiatives that focus on the importance of the family structure, such as mentorship programs, marriage counseling, workshops, parenting workshops, just to name a few. Although these programs do exist, and there are many men and women who deserve much praise for their hard work, more must be done to become innovative so that young people can see the value in these services. Education. After talking to many young people and speaking with many in the education field, it is apparent that a large portion of African American children receive an elementary, middle, and high school education that is subpar and eventually ill-prepared for vigorous collegiate level work. So what needs to happen is not only reform of our educational system, but prior to reform, there needs to be a transformation in our community's attitude towards education as a whole. This goes back to the family structure. Parents in our community needs to instill the importance of education in their children, and they should also become more aware of the educational process themselves. Now, I know most parents would state that they do instill education in their children. Well, let me ask you a question to these parents. When was the last time you took your child to the library or museum? Do you do your homework with your child as opposed to checking once they're finished? Do you read to your child? Do your children see you read? Are you a member of the PTA? When was the last time you spoke with your child's teacher for something other than behavioral issues or a mandated parent-teachers meeting? Now, this is where the breakdown of the family structure has a huge negative impact in our children's education. For many single parents, it's difficult, although not impossible, to fulfill the obligations that leads to an educational excellence and higher standards which our children have to become accustomed to. Now, the next part, or next area of power, is political empowerment. There needs to be more involvement on the part of African Americans in the political process. There needs to be a complete shift in attitude about politics, especially amongst our young people. We need to become more educated on the political process, how it works, and how it's structured, so that we can demand change when it's necessary, which is necessary now, and tackle social issues within our community. And lastly, economic empowerment. The lack of funding and the lack of entrepreneurial mechanism to foster businesses in the African American community is a complete atrocity. There is nowhere, or there are very few places in our community to seek out or receive real support to even the existing businesses. So startups don't even have a chance. How can we have innovation and a sound economic engine without the support to make it work? There needs to be a collaboration among businesses so that they can pull their resources together to develop a system that allows them to become more self-sufficient and foster an economic ecosystem. Resources include all businesses' needs as of monetary funding, information, skills, specialties, mentoring, networking, and many more. This ties in with morality and partnership, as I mentioned previously. These are necessary as a platform for trust so that these levels of community commerce can exist. Then the African American community can be equal in negotiating or becoming a participant amongst other economically sound communities. I preface these suggestions by acknowledging that there are numerous complex issues within the African American community. Although there are great obstacles and oppositions that we face as a people, I do believe that great opportunity and hope lies ahead. It is my hope that I will be able to convey some practical solutions that we can begin to implement in order to see some real changes. I also hope to be a part of more dialogue as well as actions toward these changes. We are an amazing people and resilient group of people with a rich history of contributing to this world. Now it's time to continue that legacy. But let us do it as a new man with a new future and new possibilities. Thank you.
Come on, let's hear it for Brother Corbett. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, brother. As we go along, I'm gonna plug in a number of important events. And on this Friday, October 1st, there will be the 6th annual Black Male Initiative Conference that will take place at LaGuardia Community College. As you know, the Black Male Initiative, in terms of the conferences, we go to various sites that make up the 19 campuses. First one we had was at City, second one was at Lehman, the third one was at Medgar Evers. So we go around to various colleges, and this will be the first time that we will be addressing the issue of what's going on in our community at a community college. As you know, President Obama had put forward an agenda of dealing with what's taking place in the community colleges. And as you know, right here in CUNY, they developed a new community college. So there will be a number of workshops, panels, film screenings, and seminars centered around the Black Male Initiative Conference. This particular conference theme is the politics of progress, from abolitionist Frederick Douglass to Barack Obama. And there will be 3 major keynote addresses. One, Mark Marial, president of Urban League. Peniel Joseph, he will be speaking from his book, Dark Days, Bright Lights, and Waiting in the Midnight Hour. 2 classic books that I would encourage all of you to read, because he extracts the idea and the notion that nobody comes out of a vacuum. And one of the panels that we will be having at the Black Male Initiative Conference will be how the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement set the stage for the ascension of Barack Obama. That means we stand on the shoulders of great people, and we must never forget that. And these panels will be laying forth that particular agenda. So I want you to put it in your Rolodex, or what y'all do now, and you put it in your BlackBerry, to come to the Black Male Initiative Conference. I have some flyers. It's free of charge, and why don't you also bring a young person with you so you can see the atmosphere. There usually will be about 400 to 500 people there. It's good networking. There will also be a seminar centered around dealing with how do we bring more young people into the fold. That means participating, as Brother Corbett has stated. How do we get them involved in activism? So I want to encourage you to participate in that. We have flyers here on the desk, and there will be breakfast, lunch, and there will be a nice reception that will be sponsored by LaGuardia Community College. So I would like to encourage you to come. Our next speaker is Roger N. Scotland, is the president of the Southern Queens Park Association, a human service agency founded in 1976, which finds innovative ways to combine its stewardship of the 54-acre Roy Wilkins Southern Queens Park with its mission to provide and coordinate comprehensive social service programs to children, families, adults, and seniors. In addition to the Roy Wilkins Family Center and Park, manages community-based programs at 2 Department of Education facilities and a community center located within a New York City Housing Authority development. He has written and lectured on the politics of community development in Harlem, not-for-profit board development, and has served as a consultant and board member to many community-based organizations. Born in Brooklyn, Scotland, grew up in East New York and Jamaica communities of New York City, and is a product of the New York City public school system. He received his Bachelor of Arts in History from Bard College and a Master of Arts in American History from Columbia University. Without further ado, let's welcome Brother Roger Scotland.
Good evening, everyone. I purposely did not prepare statements for this evening. When I looked at the lineup that Brother Quash had put together, I felt it was more important to listen and share and get their feedback and respond, and also to hear some of your questions. For me, when I looked at the title, From the Invisible Male to the Visible Male, How We Move from the Sidelines to the Playing Field in American Society, I kind of had a personal reflection. Growing up in East New York in the 70s, you don't really, or people don't really expect much from you. In speaking to Mary McCormick, who runs the fund for the city of New York, she started her career in public service in East New York, and she says, my measure is when property in East New York is worth $500,000. And I said, Mary, we got to change that metric because of inflation and inflated values of our properties. It's already there, and our children have gone nowhere. My mother, we spoke about the role of parents. My mother was a single parent, and the homework checking that went on for me was the belt. Thank you, sir. So if my homework wasn't done by the time that I got home, by the time she got home, I was beat. Nowadays, they would call ACS and BCW, but I also call that love, because she was also my #1 advocate. I was bussed out to schools from the first grade. I was one of the first kids that integrated schools in Middle Village and Ridgewood when it's predominantly Polish. Now, many of the teachers felt that who are you as a black student to think that you should be going to these different schools, and our zone schools weren't good enough for you. When they had programs like 2-year SP where you get skipped, she made sure that we were in it. I went to church. We had to read the Bible. You had to do recitals, so public speaking was key. And I think that these are things that we have to look at and say, if you can't be home to do your homework with your children, at least make sure it's being done, that you don't miss a parent-teacher night, and there are other things. So there are different things that we can do to be involved, but at the same time, I still have to go back to this premise of being an invisible man. Growing up in East New York, if you didn't go to the right church, you would not get a summer youth employment job. That was when the applications were given out versus the automated process. Depending on what family you were born into, that would determine your opportunities in life. Like today, many people embrace, if it's not lotto or a lawsuit, you won't get anywhere in life, versus an education, which is the method by which we can achieve greater things in life and also have discipline, much like with sports. It pains me in my role as the executive director or president of Southern Queens Park Association. I'm very mindful of what I wear around the young people we serve. If I'm in a suit all the time, I'm too clean, and they can't relate to me. If I put a shirt on that says Bard, if I went to Barnard, I would have made history as the first man. So unfortunately, I can't claim that. But I'm very careful. If I wear an Ivy League shirt, they might think that I'm different or I had a silver spoon in my mouth. I'm careful not to wear the athletic attire, because then they'll think that if they carry the ball, that will get them to other things in life. You have Michael Jordan at the age of 27, 28, when he first retired, that was offered an opportunity to be CEO of a company. But yet, when we have 35 and 40-year-old black men, they're children, including in the political arena. When we look at communities like Jamaica, Queens, how we don't represent ourselves, we are considered the most secure middle-class community in America. which is why we don't get our proper due. When you look at the level of relative poverty, the number of adults that live in one household that we report as our median income, that's why we do not get our fair share of resources. So we have to move from a position of pride and speak truth to power. When I left, I was a senior policy advisor to Mayor Bloomberg. I've worked with some of you, Brother Yusuf. Many of the programs that I took on are things that many people didn't care about. Prison reentry, alternative to incarceration, looking at equitable access. I launched the city's debit card system for some youth employment. I changed and made it an automated system, so as long as you came on time and you were online versus being a member of a certain congregation. I always fought for the people who didn't have, because I never had. So when I reflect back on my time in the administration, I also look at my experiences in other places. I worked as a fund developer for Boys and Girls Clubs and developed their programs because I never had after-school programs. I had a police athletic league that opened close to my house, and because I took a spot in a basketball team, one night somebody pulled a gun on me. So how bad is it that 12 young men at the age of 12 and 13 have to fight for a basketball team in an under-resourced community? So there are things that resonate with me around the role of a parent, you know, the role of education, one's knowledge of self. I'm a historian by training. I was to be an academic, but I'm not an academician, so I will save the numbers and some more of the policy insight to some of my colleagues here. But we have to think about the role that we play in developing the community as a whole. When I left the Bloomberg administration, many people thought I'd be a lobbyist. They thought, wow, why don't you go make $500,000? But if it wasn't for the sacrifices that other people made, I wouldn't be where I was. 23 years ago, I came through Southern Queens Park Association. There was a gentleman named Solomon Goodrich, who was a Pan-Africanist and a Garveyite, who felt that, and you'll laugh. Henry Stern, many years ago, when the community fought to make Roy Wilkins Park a reality, said that you need a community center so the young men could play basketball and stay out of trouble. Solomon Goodrich said, no, we need a family center because this is going to be the anchor institution in this community and the vehicle for change. So this is where we have to realize where we are as a people and what our role is. I had one brother who was a coach. He saw me playing in West Fourth, and he said, Roger, I'm happy that you're about to complete your PhD and that you'll put some books on someone's shelf, but you have ability to communicate and reach people. What are you going to do with that? And based on the challenges of certain people, I said, do you chase $1 or do you make a greater contribution? We each stand on each other's shoulders. So, you know, you may be a single parent working ridiculous hours, but there's still a contribution that you could make at home. We still have to look at how do we rebrand what's cool. There was an event that we had in our park where they had a dance contest and some other recreational things, and I scratched my head and I said, you know, how nice would it have been to say whoever brings a report card with the highest grade will get an iPod Touch or something of that sort. In my after-school programs, we, and I'm gonna keep it very, very practical. Because you're here already, that means that I'm preaching to the choir. This is why I thank Brother Quash, because there's many times he's reached out to me and said, can I get into 40 projects? Can I get into your center so we can have our barbershop and have discussions and tie people back into this setting? College may not be for everybody, but it's a vehicle. In our after-school programs, we're very aggressive. Funding is low, as with anything else, but our high school kids get paid $10 an hour. Our college students and adults get paid $12 an hour to work 3 hours a day in our after-school setting. We have an extended school day of sorts. It's not that recreational, but it's very structured because our children now compete in a global economy. In our summer camps out of a 12-hour day, because we're in a working class community and single parents need support, we do 3 hours of academic instruction every single day. Some parents balked at that, but how do you expect your children to even keep up if they don't have this additional support? Now, the way how we rebrand what's cool is we pay them. If you don't maintain 85 average or if you're not purposeful, you can't get that job at $10, $12 an hour. That's it. So we're in a very materialistic society, as Thorsten Veblen said, conspicuous consumption. Everybody wants what the other class has. So I'm not trying to embrace that, but at the same time, I want our kids to see that being academically fit, you have an opportunity to get someplace in life and to get the financial security you need. I'm going to sum it up so we can leave time for some of our other partners, but I'm going to give you a preview to some of the things that we're doing on the street level. I happen to also be a trustee of Bard College, and this is where, we have to step outside of our comfort zone. Although I grew up in community-based organizations, I worked in other places and came back home. Many times we're too comfortable and we just stay where we are. Because of my relationship with Bard, I was able to get Bard to come back, and through the support of Congressman Gregory Meeks, we have 4 initiatives that we're doing that we've been working on for the last 2 years since I stepped into the door. One is an early college academy for middle school students. We had, I believe, 2% children of color in specialized high schools in New York City. It is the lowest it has ever been. Now, beyond teaching children how to take a test, we have to teach children how to think, how to critically analyze things. So this program will enable 50 middle school students, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, to become better students so they could not only compete for the specialized high schools, but also go on and be successful in life and in college. We have another program for formerly disconnected young adults. Southern Queens Park Association, we have very committed staff. We're not very wealthy, but our staff's hearts are very large. We go above and beyond. We have children who people have turned their back on between the ages of 16 to 24, some formerly incarcerated, some may have just been home on their mom's basement and they think they're grown because they used the back door and they have their own entrance. Kids who may have dropped out of high school, they come to our programs with a 98% attendance rate. We have the top-ranked program in New York City, and it's being replicated by the Obama administration. They say, what do you do that's so different than everybody else? Because in social work terms, you have to meet children where they are, we are doing a college credit-bearing program on-site for primarily young adults that have come through that program, but also children in this community that may not have Regent's endorsed credits, but they have an intellectual curiosity, and they will come and they will commit themselves, and they'll be taught how to demystify the college experience. We have another college prep program to teach our children how to write and how to think. Writing is a skill set that is deficient. Many students who come into college, math is a longitudinal indicator that we look at to see where kids will end up from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. But if you look at our writing skills, even on adults in the workplace, it's terrible. So now with the amount of reading and writing that's required in higher education, I was in AP and honors classes, and I had a guidance counselor that told me to try to get into a community college, where she told my peers, apply to Harvard, apply to this, apply to that. I was prepared, and when I went to Bard, I still had to scratch my head and say, how come I never had access to these texts that you consider canon that you read in the 7th and 8th grade? Right? So we're doing college prep, middle school academy, college credit courses for formerly disconnected young adults, and finally, we're teaching teachers how to be better teachers through the Masters in Urban Teaching program and giving them college credit, graduate school credit, to make it attractive for them to come and also to better teach our kids. Kids don't only fail because they didn't go to class or they didn't apply themselves. Sometimes teachers are boring. Sometimes some of us who belong to the black church, if you have a minister who will stand and preach to you versus our traditional call and response, you may not go back to church. You want that hot and sexy church that, you know, you could speak to the minister and you could relate to him and we could clap. Well, sometimes we ain't gonna clap all the time, but you're gonna hear something. So I'd like to thank you for your time. My background has been in community development and in policy for the last 20 years. So I take a very pragmatic approach to things. So for me, I look forward to the Q&A and to hearing other persons that have been inside. I was a registered independent for 15 years. And as a registered independent and a fund developer, I had access to the Republican Party, to the Democratic Party. You see systems, you see how it works, and you learn how to maneuver. In our community, we all have to recognize what our strengths are. Sometimes we have to make that sacrifice. I had one person ask me, say, hey, you can make money and give back to these same CBOs you want to support. For me, I thought it was more important to be at a CBO and give that support. So I thank you for your leadership. I'd like to thank all of my colleagues on the panel, and I look forward to the Q&A.
Thank you, Brother Scotland. The purpose of this conference is threefold. One, to give you a sense of identity, to give you a sense of purpose, and to provide direction. And there's no better person that can do that than the individual I'm about to introduce. This brother is an intellectual activist in the Du Boisian context. That means he is able to articulate great words, but Dr. King said, words are wonderful, but deeds are divine. And this brother is that individual. I'm talking about Brother Ron Daniels is a veteran social and political activist. Dr. Daniels was an independent candidate for President of the United States in 1992. He served as executive director of the National Rainbow Coalition in 1987 and Southern Regional Coordinator and Deputy Campaign Manager for the Jesse Jackson campaign in 1988. A scholar activist who has taught history, political science, and Pan-African studies, Black studies at Youngstown State University, Cornell University, and Kent State University. He was a visiting associate professor of Black Studies at the College of Wooster in Wooster, Ohio in 1994. He holds a BA in history from Youngstown State University and MA in political science from the Rockefeller School of Public Affairs in Albany, New York, and a Doctor of Philosophy and Africana Studies from the Union Institute in Cincinnati. He is a prolific writer, a prolific organizer, and a dynamic leader. Let's welcome Brother Ron Daniels.
One thing for sure, I need an agent, so Paul, maybe you can sign on, you know, so I can translate some of all those wonderful words into some economic sustenance out here. Well, first of all, let me just say it's good to have an opportunity to share just a few thoughts again at the annual Black Male Conference, and to thank my dear friend Jonathan Quash, who keeps plugging away at this proposition that we ought to be about finding a way to encourage men, and particularly Black men, to stay the course in terms of our work in academia as well as in the community. Let's give Jonathan Quash another round of applause. I want to say a word, first of all, about why we're talking about Black men in a multi-ethnic setting. Because sometimes people feel uncomfortable, and we ought not to feel uncomfortable. We should be able to talk about crises in the Latino community. We ought to be able to talk about crises in the Asian community. We ought to be able to talk about crises in the Native American community. Certainly there's a great deal swirling around the country in terms of religious tolerance and what's going on in the Muslim community. So this is a part of what we need to do. If there's a segment of the population that is in fact disproportionately in crises, we need to be able to talk about that. We also need to be able to talk about, particularly the experiences of Africans in America. And we are having this discussion in my class on racial and ethnic politics because we are a growing, diverse nation. And there's a danger that if we don't understand each other's experiences, then we will not be able to create the more perfect union which is possible. And you can't quite create that more perfect union unless you understand the fundamental crises that people of African descent have experienced in these United States of America. And why it is that in the 21st century, after having been here for more than 400 years, we are still having this conversation. There are some who've come and who look back and say, well, wait a minute, I came, my forebears came 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and we're prospering, we're doing quite well. What is the problem with these Black folks? Well, that's why we have to have this conversation, so that you will understand the nature of the proposition, and so you can join in helping to make this a more perfect union. And I unite totally with what Paul did in the introduction, or someone said. In America today, ironically, despite the fact that we have a black man, a person of African descent in the White House, which is something, by the way, it seems to me that the notion of having a black family in the White House obviously is driving some people crazy. I mean, they really have a problem with this proposition. It's not the majority, but a certain minority seems to just go absolutely berserk at the idea of waking up every day and seeing President Obama, Michelle, Sasha, and Malia in the White House. But the irony is that even though we have, and America is better for it, a black president, we have a state of emergency in the black community. City of New York, it's not just a question of unemployment, it's a question of joblessness. Unemployment is when you consider those people who are still looking for work. But when you take into account those people who are no longer looking for work, that's called joblessness. And according to the Community Service Society, and I don't think those figures have changed much in the last couple of years, we have something like 50% black unemployment among black men when you take into consideration people who just aren't looking anymore. And Paul is right. If that were to happen in almost any other community, there would be a revolution. It would not be accepted. It would not be tolerated. And so that's why we have to have this conversation about the nature of what is happening with black men in this society. It's not to the exclusion of any other men, because I'm going to talk about manhood just in a minute, because one of the things I think we need to talk about, and I'll begin there, first of all, the invisible question that we talked about, and I think our brother touched on it to begin with, Brother Corbett, because Ralph Ellison does come to mind. But it's interesting that and when he was talking about his own experience, but it was a metaphor for the entire race. We have an invisible race here. And it's today we find ourselves in a situation where we have, it would appear in terms of the absence of public policy to address these crises, still layers of people who are invisible. And let me just make this point too, because really today we have two black Americas, two Americas. We have one, Brother Scotland, and some of us up here are doing better than we ever thought we would do. I mean, coming out of the Hill District of Pittsburgh, I never thought I'd be a professor at York College. So we have some people who are doing quite well. We have people who are heads of corporations who happen to be black men. We have athletes like LeBron James, who just built a $50 billion crib in South Beach. So we have some people who are doing quite well in the middle class and in the elite, as the old folks used to say. That's one black America. But there's another black America that Malcolm would say is catching more hell than ever before. Those are the ones who have locked out, who've been left out, who have not, in fact, been lifted by the rising tide that's supposed to lift all boats. And those are the ones, these are the people that we're really talking about. These are the invisible ones, who are really not that invisible because by their action, by the fratricide, the violence, the acting out, and in so many ways are saying, look at me, I am a man. Problem is the definition of manhood. So I want to talk about that in a minute. What does it mean to be a man in the 21st century? Because some of us are in crises because we have maybe a mistaken concept of manhood. And this might be controversial, but I decided I'd take this on. The definition used to be patriarchal. I'm the patriarch. To be a man is to be the patriarch. That is to say, to be the one who's in charge. The protector, the breadwinner, the master of the household, which largely meant that women were subservient. Strong, to be certain. Testosterone. I mean, to be a man means you are strong. You can't cry. You can't have no emotions. It means being bad. Strong, particularly in the black community. You know, you got to be a strong brother. And it also means you're fearless, don't show no emotions. That's a definition of manhood. Well, I'm not sure we want to go into the 21st century with that definition. Seems to me that the world has changed and we need to adapt to a new definition of manhood. Now, some people say, Ron, aren't there differences between men and women? Of course there are. You know, there are biological differences. And some people say that women are more nurturing and more compassionate. And that may be true. But I also believe that there are certain characteristics that are there because we are socialized to be certain ways. Women used to be socialized to be subservient. Women were socialized to believe that they could not play basketball. They could not be an engineer. They could not be certain things. That has changed. And somehow it's been difficult because if you're still dealing with that same old patriarchal notion of manhood, then you're in trouble. In fact, one of the things that we often see today is we see violence conducted against women because men somehow think they own women. My private possession. How dare you go off and talk to somebody else? How dare, I mean, you see some of the times when people are killed, you hear what was the woman killed about? Because you are mine. This sense of possession, which is a part of what we must also come to grips with when we start talking about manhood. That's an antiquated definition of manhood. It is not one that will survive or should survive in the 21st century. The new characteristics must mean from moving from patriarchy to partnership. We as men must now see ourselves as partners in the proposition of working with women to build the society that we live in. It's not my show, it's our show. And we must work collectively together in order to do that. That means at all levels, sharing in all of the responsibilities, sharing in all of the duties, including child rearing, learning how to cook. My mama taught me how to cook a long time ago, so I can bust down some pots pretty good. I can iron, I can do all, because my mother wanted me to be independent, so she was ahead of the curve. But men must be involved in all, including income maintenance and getting over this idea that if she makes more than me, then there's a problem and we got all these issues going on. I mean, we got to get over that because it's got to be about partnership and sharing. Men as companions men as companions as opposed to overseers. And men being able to get together as we do in the barbershop and talk to each other when we have crises. Health issues. We got brothers walking around, sick, ill, won't tell nobody. You know, we got to get over. We got to be able to be in touch with our emotions. It's okay to feel. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have emotions. And sisters, you know, you can't define us in terms of that old definition too, because you can't say we're weak because all of a sudden we have some emotions. You got to help us out on that one. Don't expect this Superman testosterone person on the one hand, and then on the other hand, when that person acts out in a certain way, then reject that. We've got to redefine the whole nature of who we are as men. Gender equality is what it's all about. Women and men and women are equal. And that gender equality must be a fundamental part of how we define the new man in the 21st century. There is no room for the domination, denigration, or disrespect of women by men, period. And we see that, I have to say that because we see this in some of what the lyrics and some of the music that's out here is very, very, very negative, denigrating. And there's no room for that in the 21st century. Now let me just quickly move on to the real topic, which is the coming off the sidelines. And what I want to say is that for me, the question becomes the historical, we must look at it in terms of the historical quest, and certainly Brother Corbett talked about that. But we must keep this ever in our minds. The question is, how do we, the imperative as far as I'm concerned, to be of the race and for the race? Well, Ryan, why are you talking like that? I mean, you know, no, we have to be of the race and for the race. That is to say, if we are people of African descent, if we are black people, it is intelligent to understand that we must be of the race and for the race progressively. When I say progressively, that means that we are not opposed to anybody else. But charity begins at home and spreads abroad. Love thy neighbor as thyself. You must be aware of who you are, black man, black woman. Who are you? Where did you come from? Because in part, that will help you to understand your place in the world, how we got to be in this crisis. Malcolm X said, of all our studies, history is most qualified to reward all research. How do we get to be in this predicament? And then how do we therefore use that knowledge to get out of it? So that self-awareness becomes important. Acquiring knowledge and skills. The reason why it becomes important to be of the race and for the race is because that's what Brother Corbett has already done, whether or not he's articulating it that way or not. He's got a skill. He's got business acumen. He's studied this stuff. But he's also coming back to share that skill and that his resources and your businesses with black people. Not because he hates anybody, not because he's antagonistic, but he understands that if he doesn't do it, how can he expect anybody else to do for you what you're unwilling to do for yourself? So he's already done that. The problem is we now have people who are on the sidelines in two ways. They're on the sidelines because they're apathetic, because they're out of the game, and we also have people on the sidelines because they are totally abandoned the black community. They want to like merge themselves in some mythical world until somebody, profiles them, or they get beaten up by the police, and all of a sudden they want to come back home. Maybe you're trying to get in your house near Harvard, and you open the door, and somebody doesn't understand how prominent you are, and you don't get in, and all of a sudden you know what I mean. You get you get blackened eyes, immediately. But see, we don't need to do that. We need to be clear about who we are, and to take our skills and use those skills in order to effectively be about dealing with helping our community. And so we look at historically, for example, the conference that's coming up this weekend, which I understand I'm supposed to play some small role in. Frederick Douglass. I mean, you can be on the sidelines. Frederick Douglass was on the sidelines in a way. I mean, he was an enslaved person. He was freed. He could have decided to just go on and just be a free Negro, just sort of floating around. But that's not what Frederick Douglass decided to do. Frederick Douglass decided to study. He decided to learn. He decided to perfect his oratorical skills. He was one of the greatest orators that black people have ever produced. And he challenged us as black people to engage the struggle for our own liberation. In fact, he said, too long have others spoken for us. We need to speak for ourselves. Not because he was opposed to some of the abolitionists, but he was saying, look, it's counterproductive if we can't speak for ourselves. So Frederick Douglass came out away from the sidelines, got engaged in the process of helping to liberate our people. Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey from Jamaica, man. He's down there, and his father was on his case because, he was like wandering around. He wasn't always the great man that he became. But a light bulb went off in his head, and he suddenly understood that the problems he was facing as he analyzed them was because black people were the footstool of humanity. And so he said, he said, no, that cannot be. He began to master his craft, master his skills in such a way that he could then use them to organize black people. And in so doing, he became the greatest mass organizer of black people the world has ever known. Millions of people belonging to the UNIA. And in fact, if we had all of the skill power today of doctors, lawyers, accountants, business people, if Garvey had that at his disposal, we would have been way down the road, as our folks used to say. He just didn't have he doesn't have what you bring to the table right now. Black men today have lots of skills that Garvey didn't have at his disposal. Then you have Martin Luther King. Well, why would I mention Martin Luther King? Because Martin Luther King could have been on the sidelines. He was a part of a middle-class family. He could have gone on and being, maybe he could have been another bishop, somebody or another. I mean, he could have been on the sidelines. He could have had a mega prosperity church, maybe. And he could have lived quite well. But that's not what Martin Luther King did. He came off of the sidelines. He was of the race. He was beyond the race in the sense that he was for all people. But he began the process by talking about the predicament of black people. He used his skills. And that's the point I'm trying to say to black men. You cannot just get an education. Getting an education is not enough. It's getting an education, getting a skill, getting knowledge and talent, but using that to deal with this emergency that we have in our community. That's what Martin Luther King did. And perhaps the best example that I can use is a brother named Malcolm Little. Malcolm Little, who was out in Omaha, Nebraska, where he was born, where his father, a member of the UNIA, actually was probably killed because he was a member of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. A very confused young man whose teacher told him that he would never, ever be anything. Blocked. And how many of our young people are told the same thing? Even today, we're being told that we'll never amount to anything by our parents at home, and then we get the same dosage, particularly in school, by people who are supposed to be encouraging us. He went off and he got involved in all kind of criminal activity, petty thug, hoodlum, A lot of that's going on out here in the streets today because he was lost. He had no sense of awareness of who he was as a person. But under the tutelage of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he was in prison and he found himself. And when he found himself, he decided that he would read every book in the prison library, which he did. He mastered every book in the prison, and then he read all of the dictionary and he learned every word in the dictionary. And then he decided he would no longer be Malcolm Little. He became Malcolm X, El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz. He went from being someone who was a terror and a menace to society to someone who was fighting to liberate black people. And so today we have many, and he's a metaphor for what's going on out here today. There are a lot of brothers in the shadows, a lot of brothers and so our task is we got to go out and reach and touch them. I remember the Urban Enrichment Society, Brother Jahai and them, for a couple of years ago. They were going out into the housing developments, touching people in those communities, just as you're doing, Brother Scotland, with the programs that you have. That's what we got to do, the after-school programs. But when he has the program, he's got to count on some of us to come and be a part of those programs. He's got a program. But we as black men have got to join with him in order to make those programs work. It's called returning to the source. And so I simply close with the same message that I sort of started with in that regard. And that's the notion that we have to be of the race and for the race. How much better would we be if we had artists and athletes and entertainers who really, instead of just like, I appreciate they have their little foundations and so forth, but they do so many little safe things. I mean, LeBron, I love you, brother, but a $50 million crib, I'm going to be rooting for you and all that, but got $50 million in a crib. How much more could we use those resources? It's about his consciousness. It's about him not being really fully engaged as a person of the race and for the race. He's kind of out there floating. We need LeBron back here. We need all of those athletes and artists and those business people to bring their collective resources and invest them in our community so that black men can thrive. And that new black man can step out on the planet with his black woman or whomever he chooses to marry and be associated with as a proud person within the society, contributing back to his society. We need to be of the race and for the race.
Come on, let's give it up for Brother Dr. Ron Daniels. Isn't this a very enlightening, informative forum we having? Let's give ourselves a round of applause for being here. As you know, at Medgar Evers College, we have a honor society, and we have decided to link up with York College, and it's called Phi Beta Kappa. And what we do is get young people who have a 3.0 average into this honor society, and we're trying to teach them to become intellectual activists such as Dr. Ron Daniels. The brother who is one of the founders of that particular honor society is right here, and he's from Medgar Evers College, and he's going to talk briefly about our honor society and what we're doing and how we have been working together with Jonathan and the brothers who make up the honor society here at York College. Let's welcome the director of the Male Development Empowerment Center, Brother Larry Martin.
Thank you, Brother Paul. I wasn't aware that I was going to do this, but anyway, I'm going to rise to the challenge and first say to you, I'm glad to be here, and it's an honor to share with York College, Brother Jonathan, a good friend and colleague in the work that we're doing here in New York City around the Black Male Initiative. Medgar Evers is joined with York in creating or promoting Pi Eta Kappa Honor Society. It is the brainchild of our former president at Medgar Evers College, Dr. Edison O. Jackson, who felt that it was important that we create a vehicle whereby we can say to our young men who are excelling academically that they have a place and a space where they can come together and work towards strengthening themselves academically, but also using their intellect and their energy to do some things in the campus community as well as in the larger community. So we created this honor society. You have to have a GPA of at least 3.5 and have a commitment to serving in the campus and in the community. At this particular point, we have, at Medgar Evers, we have inducted over 75 young men, as well as close to about 50 honorary members. With that, we also have the Beta chapter, which is here at York College. I think they have maybe close to like 20 young men that they have inducted here. And we are continuing to grow and develop this particular part of our program. It's a part of what we do. We do fatherhood development, we do mentoring, we do a major outreach into our local high schools and elementary schools. A lot of the work that is being done here at York College, we also do at Medgar. So as Brother Jonathan said, we're like sister institutions. We work together, we collaborate together, and we are partners in this work. But if there are any young men here at York who feel that they are academically qualified and they want to go beyond just taking book knowledge and sitting on it, we're asking you to inquire with Brother Jonathan how you can be a part of Pi Eta Kappa and get the experience and the camaraderie of being brothers in the bond of working in our campuses and on our communities. So I want to thank Brother Paul for giving me the opportunity to say something about that. And I want to say also to the panelists, I think it's a great job that you're doing and sharing with us your insight and your analysis. Thank you very much.
Brother Larry Martin. Also, in terms of all of us collaborating on various programs, a number of programs that we are going to be having at Medgar Evers College is one, a very controversial one that we have to deal with, and it's called the issue of sagging pants. And we are seeking to address that issue and trying to deal with the history, the origins, and the realities of sagging pants and what takes place. So that will be coming October 26th at Medgar Evers College. Hopefully we could get a number of brothers and sisters to participate in that program, because we feel we have to look at the reality of what is the origin of that notion of that and that idea and that example that's being set by young black men walking through the streets. Also, we won't be there to reprimand, to highly criticize, but to seek to win them over in a loving manner, in a positive manner, so they can be productive members of this society and to fight in the movement for social justice and self-determination of black people. So that's one upcoming program. The second program that we will be hosting will be centered around, we started it last year, it's called Black Men in Science. Black Men in Science. And we are addressing the historical significance and importance of a number of black men have engaged in the quest of scientific inquiry. And this is what's not being recognized. So we had our last forum, we had a couple of astrophysicists, a geophysicist, a nuclear technologist, besides the regular doctor, pediatrician, gynecologist, all those individuals that we know about, but there are brothers who are participating in scientific inquiry in fields that we can hardly pronounce, but they are laboring in the vineyards and being disciplined warriors and want to have a commitment to the quest to get more black men involved. As you know, CUNY has stated that 2005 to 2010 is the issue of how do we get more people in the sciences. And at Medgar Evers College, we have a new complex that has been developed that with a number of laboratories. It's just a state-of-the-art scientific center. So we want to try to encourage black men and not exclusively, but men in general to participate in in various scientific fields. So during Black History Month, we will be having, in the middle of February, we will be having this panel, this forum, basically a conference in which we will be inviting a number of Black men who are in these scientific endeavors. The other brother who is similar to what we do, he's the Black Male Initiative Coordinator at New York Technology, and that brother is named Reginald Blake. He's a geophysicist, and he gives of himself constantly, not only by running the Black Male Initiative, but by also incorporating various political activities. In fact, he was honored at our annual Juneteenth celebration. Each year, Councilmember Barron sponsors a Juneteenth celebration that addresses the history of Juneteenth, and it stemmed from a particular theme. And last year's theme was science, how to get more people involved in science. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce this dynamic woman. It was Winnie Mandela who said that our women hold up half the sky. And once in a while, we are blessed with an educator who is totally committed to the intellectual development of all students, an educator who is not afraid to take on controversial issues, one who will never shrink from conflict when he or she believes that a situation or problem needs to be resolved. Dr. Adelaide Sanford is such an educator. Adelaide Sanford was born on November 27, 1925 in Brooklyn, New York. She studied at Brooklyn College and City University of New York, earned a bachelor's degree in 1947. While attending college, Sanford befriended a gifted classmate, Shirley Chisholm, who later became the first Black woman in American history to be elected to Congress in Brooklyn, New York. Sanford continued her studies at Wesley College. She started a teaching career in the New York public school system. Later, she was appointed principal at Crispus Attucks School, PS 21 in Brooklyn. While serving as principal, Sanford established a reputation of promoting excellence and developing leadership at PS 21. She achieved the highest reading scores of any urban school in New York State. Shortly after she retired as a primary school principal, Sanford was elected to the Board of Regents, an independent governing body that oversees state public colleges and universities. She was reelected to another 7-year term in 1993 and to a 5-year term in 2000. During this period, Sanford chaired the Committee on Low-Performance Schools and produced a report entitled Perform or Perish. So when I think of an activist, I think of Harriet Tubman. So when I think of a freedom fighter, I think of Fannie Lou Hamer. And when I think of the gift of writing, I think of Zora Neale Hurston. But when I think of a woman who combined all these great attributes, I think of none other than Chancellor Emeritus Adelaide Sanford. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. In tribute to Black men, when I look at the audience and I see the faces of Black males, my heart is lifted because it gives me an opportunity that doesn't come too often, but it gives me a chance to tell you how special I think you are, how extraordinary you are, how gifted you are, how handsome you are. Shades of brown, shades of multicolored brownness. mulatto, pale, brown, velvet, virulent. I think black men of African ancestry, and I say that because there are some black men who do not identify themselves as of African ancestry, carry a special burden, a yoke. For it is only a person of African ancestry, the descendants of chattel slaves, who can look at the magnificent array of flags around this room, or look at the magnificent array of flags at the United Nations, or at any of the colleges and universities across the Americas, and not be able to pick out a single flag that they can say is the identification of home. The only people who can never go home, who go back as often as they can to the warm, moist shores of the continent of Africa, but can never go to the town or village that's home, can never send a postcard home or get a letter from home. It is only the black male who suffered the indignities of the Middle Passage, the inhumane, indestructible memory of that castration of their humanity. And when I look at the males today, yes, they wear their pants hanging down. They're trying to be seen. They don't want to be invisible. And I can guarantee you that whenever you see one of them with his pants down, you see him. That's the point. They are trying to erase their invisibility, and they don't know how to do it. It is because they don't know how they got to be who they are. And I look at the young black men here, and I'm so delighted that there are so many here. But that's not the number that I see when I go to Rikers Island or Coxsackie. It's not the number that I see when I go to the prisons across this state and across this nation. I see gorgeous black men, whole and perfect externally, but still wearing the chains of oppression. And we look at this black male initiative, which now we sort of soften it and call it a male initiative because we're timid about identifying the people who need to be identified in terms of the oppression and the historical, undetermined results of that oppression. But I stand here committed to say that if you can identify all of the pathological indexes as black, homelessness, unemployment, health problems, incarceration, dropping out, if you can identify them in terms of black males, then let's identify the solution in terms of black male and not avoid the issue. If you can define the problem in racial terms, why can't we define the solutions in racial terms? So I stand here first to give my voice as an elder in the African tradition, not just being old, that's just a part of it, but it's the willingness to sacrifice. It's the willingness to speak the truth. It's the willingness to embrace and forgive even those who don't know that they need to be forgiven, because I forgive them for your sake and for my sake, not for their sake, for they have no worthiness of sacredness. I give you what I consider the highest honor that can go to black men, because they are the only men that I know who raised the children born of the rape of their wives and loved them as their own. Do you know any other men who did that? Think about how many black males in the tradition of chattel slavery raised the sons and daughters born of the rape and abuse of the women to whom they had given their heart. It's not about my baby mama. It's not about the boyfriend babysitting the girlfriend's baby. It's about the black man who had the courage, the compassion, the ability to love, who raised the children born of the rape of their wives. My grandfather was one such man. He was born of not a romantic relationship, not an affair, but an overpowering and abuse of his mother by the plantation owner. Now, the plantation owner gave him his name because that identified him as belonging to the owner of the plantation, but he didn't give him his inheritance. He didn't give him his strength. He didn't give him his power. He didn't give him his place of respect. It was the black man to whom his mother had given her heart. She couldn't marry him. You see, this notion of shacking up, we didn't start it. We need to stop it, but we didn't start it because we were not allowed to marry. Couldn't just marry whites, you couldn't marry anybody because you were denied the opportunity of the sacredness of the bond. But it was that man who raised my grandfather, taught him to hunt and fish, taught him to be a carpenter, gave him a sense of what it meant to be protective and loving. That's why I give this tribute to men of African ancestry. If you could know who you were before you became what you are, you would stand tall. You would push your shoulders back. You would look forward and up and out, but you don't know. And it is not a mistake that you don't know. Long before we were chattel slaves, we were kings and queens. We ruled empires and kingdoms. We wrote, we studied. Teachers were priests. They studied 40 years to be a teacher. People came from all over Greece and all over Europe to come to Africa, to Timbuktu, to Mali, to Ghana, to learn science and music and mathematics. There's no such thing as we can't learn math. We created mathematical formulas. But if you don't know that, then you can't live up to it. And so when we were taken away from where we can't even name the name of the person or the place that we came from, my grandmother, who was a chattel slave in this country, and I knew her in my lifetime, and I'm so glad that I didn't learn about slavery from Gone with the Wind, that I learned firsthand from a woman who had suffered and borne the lash. And she said when the vessel left the shores of West Africa, she had sisters and brothers and cousins and aunts and uncles and neighbors on that vessel. Some of them may have gone to Haiti, Trinidad, Barbados, South America, all over. She never saw them again. And when I see people from Trinidad and they say, oh, I am a Trinidadian, I'm a Jamaican, I'm a Haitian, I'm a Bajan, I said, but you could be my cousin, you could be my aunt's great-granddaughter. How can you now separate yourself from me? You may have gotten off the boat in a different place, but we got on the boat in the same place. Now, I understand their pride because now they own the land. They love Jamaica and Haiti and Trinidad and Barbados because they own the land. And the Native American has the reservation where they can continue those customs and behaviors that they felt enabled them to survive. And if you look at the ads in the papers now, you will see young Native Americans saying, I'm going to stay on the reservation because there I can preserve who I was. We have nothing, the African American who is the descendant of a chattel slave. I can't send money back to rebuild the town or village or the country that I came from like the Italians can, like the Caribbeans can, like the Mexicans can, like those from Ecuador can. So the continent of Africa suffers from my lack of identification. Do you understand that I can't leave an inheritance to my children I can't leave an inheritance to my children because the little bit of money that I put into the life insurance companies, Columbia and Metropolitan and all those insurance companies, they charged African Americans more and then didn't pay them when the person died. So you have a proliferation of profoundly convulsive circumstances that created what we see today. And while you have this initiative funded with pennies in terms of the need, you realize that the greatest punishment during chattel slavery was to be found reading or writing. All of those of us who are in education, do you know about the Lake Mohawk Conference that was held in the 1800s when Rutherford Hayes was president? It was a conference to determine what are we going to do about the African American now who may be free. We weren't called African Americans. We were colored. We were niggers. We were Negroes. We were whatever the oppressor decided to name us. And you see, no intelligent people accepts the name that the oppressor gives him to demean him and makes it his own. But you do that when you don't know who you are. You will use whatever weapons the oppressor makes for you. So at the Lake Mohawk Conference, they decided what to do about these African people who were now going to be free. Said, teach the teachers how to teach them not to know who they are. Never let them identify with the continent of Africa. Never let them control their schools. Dr. Wimbush at Morgan State has researched this Lake Mohawk Conference. It should be a part of the educational curriculum for those who are teaching. And then you know about the Topeka versus the Board of Ed, when the national law was that you must have integration. And Charles Willey, professor emeritus from Harvard University, who was a major consultant on desegregation, he said, you know what the problem was with integration? The implementation was given to the segregationists. That's what went wrong. And if you look at all of these programs, I was teaching when Title I came into existence. You had to accept being called disadvantaged, culturally deprived, at risk, all these pejorative names. And who got the money? Not the parents of the children who were in need, but the same people who had created the problem got the money. Today, you talk about the achievement gap. There's no achievement gap. It's an access gap. It's an opportunity gap. It's a health gap. It's a housing gap. When you say close the achievement gap, it assumes that there are white children and children of African ancestry who are getting the same enriched curriculum, the math, the science, the music, the performance. They're seeing curriculum that identifies them. They see their face on the map of human history, and one group is achieving and the other one isn't. So you put the burden on the student. You are not achieving like the white child. Now, do you know any African male adolescent who wants to act white? That's the last. If you tell them, if you say thank you, you're being white, they won't say thank you. That's the last thing they want to be, is an imitation of a white person. So why would you say you've got to close the achievement gap, black boy, by functioning like a white boy? Do you think that the Williams sisters' parents told them, you've got to go out there and play tennis like the white folks play tennis? You think Ben Carson's mother said, go out there and operate like the white surgeons operate? He would have never separated the Siamese twins at the head if he had. What about achieving your potential? What about mastering your greatness? Never do you hear that. And who gets the money for the closing of the achievement gap? The same people who made the gap. The providers in the system protect themselves. They can't say, we haven't given you the resources. We can't say, you're not in the textbooks. We can't say, you don't know your history. We got to put it on you. And so this black male carries that burden of not knowing who he is or how he got there. Do you know that Albert Shanker, the great head of the Union, in 1980 made a major speech saying black children must not learn their history because if they do, they will identify with their ethnicity instead of being Americans? He didn't say there were any other groups that should not learn their history. They can learn their history from their parents. Their history wasn't taken away by law and legislation. There is a uniqueness and an individuality about the oppression of people of African ancestry. And we hesitate to identify the uniqueness of it. And we begin to say, everybody, it's not a problem of everybody until you can show me the prisons of this nation diverse. When you can show me the epidemic of disease diverse. When you can show me housing inadequacies diverse. When you can show me poverty diverse, then I'll accept your everybody. But until such time as that, I will identify the problem in the same way that I identify the ethnicity of the people who are carrying that burden. So we have an enormous issue in education. What is there for an African-American male in kindergarten and nursery school? Little Bo Peep, Red Riding Hood, Rose Red, Humpty Dumpty, Rockabye Baby. First place, they're all stories of violence. What happens when Rockabye Baby in the treetop? When the bough breaks, what happens? Is that a wonderful story? What about the three bears, Goldilocks? Children would tell me, when I started teaching in 1950, Miss Hines, if that had been me, breaking down the door, breaking up the furniture, eating up the food, getting in the bed, I'd be underneath the jail. It's classical literature. Do you think a black male adolescent can identify with that? There's nothing there. He's invisible in the school system. He lives in the housing project. The housing project, a bleak, dank, what kind of a world? Vertical, concrete world. And here are people coming from a horizontal, virgin, wooded area with trees and lakes and meadows. And he comes to a vertical concrete world. Do you think that the housing projects were built for everybody? No, they were built to contain the people of African ancestry coming from Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia, to contain them where they could be monitored. One of the first efforts when I became principal of the Crispy-Saddick School, number one, was to help the parents know not to be satisfied with a half day of school. Because for 10 years, the children had had a half day of school. And a part of that half day was the teacher's preparation period, and another part was the lunch hour. So how much instructional material could they cover? Then they went on to the middle school, and we were not allowed to put on the record card that they had never had a full day of school. So they carried the burden of their inadequacy into the middle school and the secondary school, and the system kept it quiet. Same things happening today. All the talk about charter schools. If charter schools were so wonderful, why aren't they in Scarsdale and Great Neck? Why are they only in low-income communities of people of color, if they're so great? Why are hedge fund millionaires funding the education in charter schools? Ask yourself those questions. Critical thinking and analysis of the situation. So when you look at the curriculum and think that the Board of Regents, which is the agency constitutionally responsible for education, doesn't matter what the federal government does, their money goes to the state to be put into the school systems in the city. Now, if I ask members of any audience, who is the regent from your judicial district? I would like to tell you that sometimes there's somebody who knows. Most of the time, there's nobody who knows. So all of the talk about changing the school system, unless it's changed on the state level and put into the examination system, the curriculum will never change. The curriculum of inclusion was a massive review of curriculum in the state of New York, and the decision was it is omissive, it is distortive, it is marginalizing, and that's why the children are failing. But it was never voted upon because it made some people uncomfortable. Education is the mechanism to keep those in power and in control and comfortable. And the way to change it is to understand how to use power, how to negotiate a political system. If you have one person in a democracy who is in charge of education, has never been an educator, has no children in the public school system, and you give him complete authority over the school system, and you have no adjudicative process. Where do you go if your child doesn't have a textbook? Where do you go if their records never get to the middle school? Not only in New York City, but in New York State. If you are one of the 52 professions that the Board of Regents regulates, you can call free 800 number and say, the architect designed the building wrong. The gardener put the rhododendron bush in the wrong place. 52 professions where the consumer can initiate a charge and will be investigated, but not education, because teaching is not a profession in the state's estimate. So no guidance counselor, no lab, no teacher with a science background, no music, no art. Where do you go? That's why we're in the situation we're in. Not because you can't learn, because you haven't been given the resources, the opportunity to learn, because you are living in the trauma of invisibility in the curriculum of this state and of this nation. And one of the interesting things that's happening now is the true feelings of people are coming out. It's fascinating to listen to the Tea Party and to listen to politics. It's wonderful as far as I'm concerned, because it helps you to realize the nature of the oppressor. Look at it like that and analyze what he's saying and do. It's fascinating that Hafeez, who was the controller and gave all this money to his friends and took trips to Israel, and Patterson went to a ball game with 2 tickets. Understand what that means. I pay tribute to men of African ancestry, and I pay tribute to the women who have loved them because of and in spite of. To the women who have raised them alone. And if we are going to help our people with all these marvelous underfunded programs that we have, there are 2 other things that we're going to have to do. We're going to have conversations between black men and black women, so they talk to each other about their pain and misunderstanding and confusion, and why we're angry with each other and why we hit out at each other when we're not each other's enemies. Colleges and universities may not be able to do that, but community-based organizations can. The Board for the Education of People of African Ancestry can entertain that kind of conversation. We need to have not parenting education, pre-parenting. Noah didn't build the ark while the flood was raging. He would have had a much more difficult time. And so trying to help people to learn how to be parents, you got to see them before the sperm meets the egg. That's what I used to tell my parents when they'd bring the children to kindergarten. Miss Sanford, I don't want any games and puzzles and toys. I want him to be like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and I want him to be like Marcus Garvey, and I'd look at them and tell, what was going on when the sperm met the egg? Because that's when the die was cast. And I had to help them to understand that you can't get blood out of a turnip. Let's have pre-parenting. Let's have conversations so I can tell you how you've hurt me. And you can help me understand why you hurt me. When I can help you to understand that you're a man not as defined by how much you have, but your gentleness, your mercy, your compassion, your ability to accept who you are. My tribute to black men, the only ones who raised the children born of the rape of their wives. Magnificent, handsome, proud, dangerous.
Dr. Adelaide Sanford. Come on, y'all. Let's give her a round of applause. Magnificent gems of wisdom. Are you all enjoying yourselves? This is a very enlightening and informative forum. Our next presenter, I'm sure, is no stranger to you all. He's definitely not a stranger to this college. And I had the great opportunity to work with him for 5 years. And he has been a leading light in this city in terms of electoral politics. He follows in a great tradition of activists and intellectuals who participated in a movement for social justice on the political scene. He follows in the tradition of Adam Clayton Powell Jr. He follows in the tradition of a Benjamin Davis, and there are not many black radicals such as this brother who participate and engages in the electoral system. He doesn't not only run for office, but he encourages you to run for office. Brother Councilman Barron, a former member of the Black Panther Party, he's an articulate spokesman for the rights of African people across the globe. And he's also a dear friend of mine whose heart doesn't pump Kool-Aid. He's courageous, he's bold, he's audacious. Let's welcome my main man, my comrade in struggle, Councilmember Charles Barron.
Thank you very much. Let me just say off the top, I hope to get y'all in trouble with me. I need help out here. I want y'all to start as much trouble as you can. Don't try to be cool. We need to shake this thing up. The thing I like most about being a strong black man is that when you get in the halls of power, that's when it should truly come out and truly let people know we are. I thank God that God made me a black man. There's no other man I would want to be than a black man. A black man is a warrior at heart. That's why we have so many misguided warriors sometimes in our communities, because we want to fight. We want to strike back. We know we've been done wrong, but sometimes we strike back at each other instead of striking back at those who've been striking us. So my call today is for black men to be radical, be black. Don't be no punks. We got enough of them at City Hall working with me. We got enough of them in the state houses. We got enough of them in the Senate. We don't need no more punks. And what I mean by that, you know, they got you when you're in the hallways of City Hall and you're talking to a black man, strong-looking black man. No one is around but him and I. And when he mentions the white man, he whispers in my ear. We're in the hall by ourselves. And he said, let me tell you something about the white man. I said, say it, ain't nobody here but us. When they got you whispering, even when they're not around. So I want to make a call to radical politics. This is a great time to be alive. This is a great time for us to strike. They're afraid of you. They know that we are going to rule now. New York City should have been ours already. A black man should have won. Billy Thompson ran against Michael Bloomberg, an incumbent mayor, with $100 million. Billy Thompson had $8 million, and he only lost by 4.6 percentage points. That close. We could have been the Speaker of the City Council. We're the new majority. But you know, something's deep when you have the power and you won't use it. You have it, and they know you do. They know they can't stop you. So what they're going to do is try to create some of you to be the kind of black that they want you to be the black man that they want you to be. We got a black president, we got a black governor, and we could possibly have a black mayor. And look at the black community. There's something fundamentally wrong when you're the president and you're the governor and 50% black men are unemployed. Something's fundamentally wrong when you're in New York City and you are the new majority, whites are minorities. I was running for mayor and they said, well, how are you going to get the white vote? I don't need it. I'm the majority. They should have asked the white guy how is he going to get the black vote. I'm running for governor now. Give me a hand clap. Under the Freedom Party, they asked me if by running for governor under the Freedom Party, will you take votes away from Andrew Cuomo and then Palladino will win? How? I said, what votes? Which ones? They said the black vote. So you're going to ask a black man if he will take votes away from the white man so that the other white guy could win. I'm not in. When did they vote? Nobody voted yet. How did he get your vote? He got your vote in his pocket, but look at their mentality. A black man is going to take black votes away from the white guy, and this nutcase is going to win. That's to scare you from voting from us and having a self-determining Freedom Party and no longer being on the plantation and saying that we got to wait for the white man to help us out and do things for us. So I said to the reporter, I said, first of all, if you want to stop Palladino, tell Andrew Cuomo to drop out of the race and stop taking all of my white votes, and then I'll win and I'll beat Palladino. He should drop out. He should be the one to stop taking my white votes. A lot of white people would vote for me if Andrew would just get out of the race. Just get out of the race. See, they'll never say that. So I like the fact that black men, when we get in these halls of power, man, don't change. Don't think you got to do things to get over. You know, I hear that a lot. I'm just doing this. This is a strategy. I'm just doing this until I make it. But once I make it, I'm going to tell them off. I'm going to tell them about themselves when I make it. Whatever you are when you're trying to make it, that's what you're going to be when you make it. And that's why you watch people, what they're doing to make it. So when we get around power, they told me, Charles, if you're running for office, you better be cool. Don't talk too black. Because if you talk too black, you're not going to make it. You're not going to get elected. Because people are not going to, that's the thing of the 60s, that black talk. That's the 60s talk. You better learn how to play the game. I don't play games. I'm not in this to play any games. So when I ran, I told them I'm a Black Panther. And they said, oh, you're an ex-Black Panther? I said, no. Take off the X. I'm still a Black Panther to my heart. Always will be a Black Panther. They get you on TV and they try to, every time I turn around, I think my name is ex-Black Panther Charles Barron. Because they say that all the time, ex-Black Panther, just to let white people know and let some of you know, he's a Black Panther. Yeah, that's right, so what about it? What about it? The Panthers fed children breakfast. The Panthers were concerned about health care. The Panthers made sure that people weren't homeless. The Panthers made sure that the police didn't beat you upside your head because they patrolled the police. And when the police jumped out of their car, the Panthers jumped out of theirs. If we had Panthers up in the Bronx patrolling the police that followed Amadou Diallo around, he'd still be alive today if we had the Black Panthers following the police. So yes, I'm a Panther, always will be a Panther. And all of us need to embrace our blackness. You know what's happening now? We're missing something. A black consciousness movement. Steve Biko had it right. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. They don't have to do anything to you. We will do it to ourselves. So black men, be radical. Don't be afraid to stand up, and you know what's right. You know what's wrong. If you're going to be a doctor, be a radical black conscious doctor. Don't just fix people up and forget about the community. If you're going to be a teacher, a professor, be a black radical professor. And radical just simply means getting to the root cause. There's nothing wrong with being radical. They said, Charles, you know, you're too black. How do you be somewhat black? I don't know what that phrase means. You're too black. Well, what do you want me to be? Just a little bit black? Like somewhat black? You're too radical, Charles. You got to stop scaring people. I don't know how to not scare white men. I really don't. I don't even get up thinking about them. I wake up in the morning thinking about you. I don't even think about them. I get to City Hall, and simple things. If you say simple things, I walked around City Hall and I saw nothing but big, huge pictures of white men all over the place during the colonial period. And these were life-size photos. I couldn't concentrate. I was trying to be a good legislator. So I said, look at these pictures. And I have to admit, I thought some of them might come out with a noose and do something. So I said, take some of them white men's pictures off the wall. It's scaring me. I can't focus on my work. Put Malcolm X up there. Put Martin Luther King. Put Harriet Tubman up there. I feel more comfortable. Then we could even it out. They said I was racist. They said, there he go again. You know what's interesting? You point out racism and you become the racist. I said, look, it's too many white men up on the wall. There he go again, playing that race card. Well, you put the pictures up there. I'm not playing a race card. And then I said, you know, New York City is racially divided. There he goes again, bringing up that race. Well, I didn't make Bensonhurst a white community and Brownsville black. You did. I didn't draw the line to make Harlem black and Howard Beach white. You did. So we point out racism and we become the racists. I said a simple thing. They said, why are you running for mayor? I said, because white men have too much power. There he goes again, bringing up that race, playing that race card. See, they try to make you think like you're the problem. So I wake up every day, I'll be honest with you, I say, who can I beat up today? Because I'm going to get somebody. Black men, you want to stay healthy? Love your woman and get the white man in power. Beat him up. Don't beat your sister up. Don't beat your children. Get the one that's been getting you for a long time. What I like about being in the city council and having a little power and being a Black Panther, I ain't got no problems with shirts and ties, brothers, but I don't wear them. You know, I haven't worn a shirt and tie in my life. They said, oh, them Nehru suits, that's the suits of the 60s? No, that's the suits of a black man that decide this is how you want to dress. And you could be black with a shirt and tie, too. I'm just making another kind of point. But I like coming in there because then, you don't dress like them. I don't walk like them. I don't talk like them. I ain't trying to, have refined standard English. Don't get me wrong. Learn standard English so that you can get the gig. But believe me, I'm going to come back and talk to you about this language thing, black men and women. how they really have you thinking that you speak bad English. They really have you thinking that because they don't accept anything African about you. Nothing. They don't accept your hair, a little bit that I got left. They don't accept your complexion, your beautiful, coarse, rich hair, your black, ebony skin. They don't accept your nose, your lips, nothing. And you know what else they don't accept? Your language. You came here speaking African languages. You weren't English. We're not English men and women. You came here speaking African languages, and they took the people who stole you were the lower class Cockney English speakers of England. They spoke the lower class English, and the Brennan English of the elites was the King's English. So your slave enslavers, they didn't put you in no English proficiency class and teach you how to speak English. They just told you, stop saying those African words, say some English words. Don't use those African words anymore. Any linguist will tell you vocabulary is not what determines your language. They will tell you it's the grammar, it's the morphology, it's the syntax, it's the phonics system. The lexicon, which is the vocabulary, is the superstructure. So this is where they got you. They had you speaking English words, and some of you still do, but in your substructure, you still have African language rules. That's why it doesn't sound like them. So what they told you is that that's bad English, and you bought it. Especially some of you, and none of you here, the bushy ones. You know those bourgeois Negroes that think they speak proper? Went to school. That's why they get mad at me when I talk about language. They thought all their lives they finally got to speak good. And here I come saying it's not. And you're just as black and African as we are. But this is what they did. Let me show you something real quick, and I'll move past that. There's certain African language systems that has different rules. So in the morphology of African language systems, if you have a double consonant, you don't pronounce the last consonant in our African rules. So we're not going, we're going. We ain't coming, we coming. This is not a desk, it's a desk. We don't take tests, we take tests. And some of you take tests. Now that ain't even African. That ain't even African. I don't know what you talking about. So I don't want you to put that on our African language system. I don't know where you got that one from. I can't help you with that one. Y'all made that up. We don't be taking no tests. But see, there's a difference, and it's not bad. It's different. You know, we even have a different syntax, a different arrangement of our sentences. So when you say, where your mother at? The preposition at the end, that is correct in some African languages. Where your mother at? And then in some African language systems, it's simple. We don't have to have a apostrophe S, like possession. That's my mother's house. That's my mother, and that's her house. What's your problem? What do you need an apostrophe S for? You know that's my mother, and you know that's her house. So where you going? To my mother's house. But they said that that was bad English. Bad English. You didn't say my mother's house. So I asked this guy, I was on a TV show, he said, Charles, but it's easy. Why don't they just say my mother's house? Why don't they just say that? It's not difficult. Just say my mother's house. I said, sir, why do you don't think they say it? Where do we get that from? Let me ask you this. At some point in your life, I know you're smart now, but at some point in your life, you said this and that. You did not say this and that. You said this and that. You wonder why black people, no matter where we are, will say this and that at some point in your life, not when you got smart, when you're still African, not what you are now. Let me stop. Not when you've grown up and got educated. Why is it if you're in the Caribbean, we say this and that? If you're African on the continent learning English, we say this and that. If you're an African American at some point, we say this and that. Where did it come from? We didn't gather somewhere and say, listen, no matter where you go, say this and that. Even if it's in the Caribbean, the reason being in some African language system, the TH sound, if it's at the beginning of the word, it has a DA sound. That's where you got it from, your African language systems. And if the TH, listen to this, if the TH is at the end of the letter, it has an F sound. That's why both of us are going down south after we brush our teeth. We don't be brushing our teeth. We brush our teeth. Boy, go brush your teeth. That's not bad English. See, this is the reason why I'm raising it, brothers and sisters, because this begins some of the inferiority complexes. When you think your hair is bad, your lips are bad, you speak bad, you're gonna think you're bad. And you're gonna think there's some superior speech. Now, I'm not telling you not to learn. I got to repeat this because every time I do this, people think I'm saying don't learn standard English. I don't want you to go looking for the gig and saying, I'm going to sit right there, because you will not get the job. I'm just saying, when you learn and master standard English, you're not speaking better. You're speaking different, and different doesn't mean deficient. That was deep. Give me a hand clap. That was kind of deep. That was kind of deep. We got to begin to know who we are. We got to begin to appreciate our culture. Let me say this too. You are a miracle. You are awesome. Dr. Sanford is right. I love when she gets up and tells us how fabulous we are. Just think of this. Let's take the years that they say. Now, I know we've been here before 1619, when they say the first Africans came here, 20 Jamestown. We were here long before that. We didn't come here as enslaved Africans. We came here as explorers. We came here before Columbus. Read Dr. Ivan Van Sertima's books. We've been here. We've been doing a lot of great things. But let's just take their years. 1619. From 1619 to 2010, we've been here for about 390-something years. Close to 400 years. Let's give them that. From 1619 to 1865, that's 246 years out of your 390, 246 years of legal chattel slavery. You've been enslaved more than you've been free. 246 years. 1865, and by the way, Lincoln did not free you. He didn't free a single enslaved African. The Emancipation Proclamation occurred in 1863. In 1865, when the World War ended, 3.8 million of us were still enslaved, because Lincoln said all of the slaves are free in the slave states that left the Union. The ones that stayed, you can keep your slaves. Well, he can't free you if they left and they're not under his jurisdiction. It was Jefferson Davis. So he didn't free anybody. 1865 to 1965, another 100 years of Jim Crow, apartheid racism. Now you add it up. 246 years of legal chattel slavery, 100 years of Jim Crow racism. In 1965, they said, uh-oh, they might be human. Let's give them some civil rights. That's 1965. What, 40, 50 years ago? So that's 346 years of legal chattel slavery and Jim Crow racism out of your 400. When a brother or sister gets on your last nerve, just say, that's a 346. I'm going to work with you because you are a 346. You lost your mind. So I'm going to work with you because I know your history. I know what you've been through. But just think, 346 years of that, and look at us. The black man is the handsomest man on the planet. We are fine. I get up in the morning, don't care what you think. I say, I'm a fine black man. Look at me. That's before I go out. I got to tell myself that because y'all are mean. Y'all might not think so. So if you don't think I'm fine, just get your ugly self out of my face and leave me alone. But tell yourself you look good, brother. Get up in that mirror. I really do. I get in the mirror and I said, I like how you look. Whatever God gave me, I love it. And if you say I'm good looking too, that's extra. It's not needed. Thank you, but it's extra. So black men, I love black men. Do you see us? I mean, the way we walk, you know, even the brothers in the hood, you know, when you talk to them, got that rhythm, you know, there's something about us. And then, you know, when it comes to look, we got Denzel. Denzel's a black man. I know y'all gonna give me a hand clap on that one. Denzel, Barack Obama, I got problems with his politics and all of that stuff, but that brother makes me proud sometimes. You know, I look in there and I said, look, brother, I got real issues with some of your stuff, and maybe one day we'll talk. And we did talk one day. And, but I like to see that the way he walks. He's stressed out there, and that's a brother. He could try to hide all the blackness he wants until he starts walking. You know, then when he starts walking, uh-oh. And then Michelle just messes him up. Give me a fist bump, bro. You know? So, now, Michelle, come on now. We got to stay in the White House. You need to be cool. So he's working on Michelle. You know he's a black man when he married a black woman like Michelle. So I give him credit for that. That's a big plus for his blackness, you know, Michelle. And plus, you know, he was in 20 years. He was in a black liberation theology church with Reverend Wright. He heard them sermons. He heard every last one of them sermons. In no way he could have been absent in 20 years every time Reverend Wright threw down bad on America. Oh, I wasn't at that service. But Rock said, I stayed home. I didn't know he was like that. What? Get out of here. You know what they told him? Here's what I give him respect for. Joining that church, 20 years. Michelle, big kudos. And his walk. And he worked on the south side of Chicago. Didn't have to do that. Right? Plays ball, got a nice jump shot. Got a nice little jump shot. But most the blackest thing about him is his mind. He's brilliant. He's brilliant. I don't mean black culturally, you know, but his mind. And the other thing I respect about him, they asked him, how do you call yourself? He said, I'm black. I'm an African American. Now, he got a white mama. He could have said, I'm mixed. Like Tiger. He could have been a Cablinasian. Now, Tiger, that boy, whoo, I ain't even going to go there. He didn't even fool around with sisters, man. He shouldn't have been fooling around anyway. But dang, he didn't even fool around with not one sister. I'm looking at, oh, another Tiger woman. Okay, maybe the next one. Oh, another Tiger woman. Or maybe the next. Another Tiger woman. 10 more Tiger women. I mean, he shouldn't have fooled. I ain't down with fooling around. You're not supposed to fool around. But come on, Tiger. Not one sister? That's why he got in trouble. Sister would have said, hey, let me show you how to keep this under cover, you know, let me work for you. But, you know, Tiger tried to identify everything in himself, a Cablinasian. He put the Caucasian first. Caucasian, black, Indian, and Asian, a Cablinasian. You know, you don't have to try to identify every drop of blood in you. Nobody does that. There are no more mixed races left on this earth. None. Everybody's mixed. You know, whites are more confused about their identity than you are. I used to do classes on that. I would go to colleges and I would say, I'm African. I didn't even put the American in just so they can get upset. So what are you? You're African American? Nope, African. I said, what about American? I'm African. American is not an ethnicity. I'm an American citizen. I happen to be an African. I told my son, you're an African boy born in Brooklyn. He said, what'd you say, Daddy? I said, you're an African boy born in Brooklyn. So when you tell your children that, you better be consistent. So I was driving him home one day. He was 8 years old. He said, Daddy, his name is Jawanza. It means dependable one. He said, Daddy, what does Barron mean? Uh-oh. I said, Barron? He said, yeah. I said, that's a European name. He said, what? You gave me a European name? So I said, well, you know, me and your mother didn't want to go through the legal thing and change. He said, well, y'all didn't have to. Why'd you give it to me? So I said, well, what would you want to name yourself? He said, Jawanza Zimbabwe. So I said, well, when you get old enough, go ahead. But he wants consistency. You see, so we got to get together with our identity. See, we don't really know who we are. I bet if before I got here, I would have passed a note around to each one of you and said, tell me who you are ethnically. I probably would have got as many different answers as we have people here. And we all African people. But we might say African American, black woman, black man. And then some of you get deep. Y'all say, I'm Nubian. Now, I don't know how you found out your country. But some of y'all get, you know, real deep when you go, you know, real back. So black man gets some kind of identity. You know, we got to come to grips with this identity question, whether it's through our language, our culture. We got to know who we are ethnically. We're an African people because you can't be who you are ethnically based upon where you're born. I mean, that means I could take my wife and go to China, and if I have a little baby in China, looking black as everyone here, you're not going to call that baby Chinese because he was born in China. And then if we fly to Vietnam, have a little baby there, then now I got a Vietnamese kid and a Chinese kid. And then if we take Delta and something happens on the plane and we have a baby on the plane, that'll be little Delta. You're not who you are based upon where you're born. We are who we are based upon our place of origin. And we originated in Africa, and they dropped some of you off in the Caribbean and some off here, and that's how we became different kinds of things nationally. So we got to at least know that we're African people, and we were speaking originally African languages. And plus, it's great to be African, man. We're the first people on the planet. Nobody was here before us. How does the first original people on the planet that gave the world astronomy, astrology, math, science, how did you become inferior to somebody? How did that happen? What happened to you that all of a sudden now we got to preach to you and say, be proud to be black, be proud to be this? What happened? So we go through that. So that's why, black man, I wanted to come today to say, finally, be black, be radical, and don't be afraid to be radical and black. And it's all about power. Power, that's what they respect when you have power. I like that I'm in the city council. Yeah, I got my issues. I fight all the time, and they're always picking on me. I don't bother nobody, but they're always picking on me. The newspapers call me names. I have to go to the dictionary to find out what they're saying about me. My wife is brilliant. She's a teacher and knows word master. I don't know a lot of big words. I only know 3, 4, 5-letter words at the most. But they call me the execrable. They call me odious. So they said the odious Charles Barron. I went home and I said, Inez, are they saying I stink? You know, what's this odious mean? She said, no, they didn't say you stink. That means evil. I said, oh, I thought they were saying I stunk. I could deal with evil. But they're going to call you names, brother. They're going to call you, they're going to have your own people scared of you. They're going to try to isolate you, try to make it as though something's wrong with you because ain't nobody thinking like you. You got to hold on to that. So when I do, instead of me going to City Hall saying, golly, another day, I got to go to this meeting. We had a full state of me, not another meeting. It's flipped. Now 50 of them say, oh, Lord, here he comes. Oh, not Charles Barron again. And I come in there, stepping, you know. They took my chair. I used to be the chair of higher education, took on the speaker. So she took my chair and thought that was going to do something to me. I brought my own chair to work. And I'm still the people's chair of higher education. Give me a hand clap. I'm still a people's chair. So they take your chair, try to punish you, try to make you scared to do things. But what I do, every time they do something to me to think it's going to hurt me, I speak louder. And if I don't have nothing for the day, I'll make something up, just so that I'm in your face. Because I want to let them know, no chair don't mean nothing to me. I didn't go to City Hall to get a chair. I didn't go to City Hall so you could like me or somebody could say nice to me. I went there to get something for my people. And when you come to East New York, I'm the #1 council member in building affordable housing, because I don't let any developer come in my district without making the houses really affordable. So if Donald Trump, this is the power. Y'all need to run for office. This is the power. The city council determines what's built on city-owned land in our districts. So if Donald Trump came to East New York and wanted to build Trump Towers on Blake Avenue, he has to see me, the Black Panther. And I'll say, what you want, Mr. Trump? Sit down. And then when I'm finished with him, I'll do what he does to everybody else. You're fired. Get out of here. He can't do it. They come to my district, say they want to build something. White men, they don't care that I'm a Panther. You do, but they don't. They said, this is the man I got to come to get this thing built. He has to sign it. He has the power. How you doing, Mr. Barron? Remember when I said at a rally, a reparations rally, that I was going to slap the first white man I see for my black mental health? You know, I was just talking. Y'all know I was just talking. I was just talking at a rally. They get so serious. You know, I can't even play around, Dr. Daniels. I was at a reparations rally, and I'm up there saying, you know, like they got quiet. I was there, Jesse was there, Farrakhan was there, about a couple 100,000 people. And I noticed, I've never seen people talk when Farrakhan is talking. And so I noticed the people was just, you know, talking when other speakers were talking. So when it was my turn, I said, you know, let me get up there and try to settle these folk down. So I was half playing and half serious. So I got up there and I said, y'all be still. What's wrong with you? Stop. Somebody trying to talk and y'all moving around. We shouldn't be on no lawn talking about reparations, begging people for your reparations. We should go to the Treasury Department. Let's take out reparations. They said, yeah. There ain't no money in the Treasury Department. They just write checks. So I'm just talking. Now that I had them, I said, okay, where you going next? So I'm walking on the stage trying to think about what to say next. I said, get on my nerves. Murdered us. We should be talking about scorched earth. They said, yeah. So one more, then I'll get into my speech. My last nerve. Said, when I get back to New York, first white man I see, I'm going to slap him. And tell them it's a black thing. He said, yeah. Well, why did I say that? ABC, NBC, New York One. See, I forgot about them. And I forgot I was a city councilman. I thought I was like Charles from the Hood talking to the people. When I got back to New York, my city council member said, where were you this weekend? I said, I was in Washington. Well, what did you do? We got emails, white men from all over the country, because they played it on CNN. When I got in my office, white men were calling me up. Hi, you Councilman Barron? I said, yes, I am, sir. You want to slap a white man? Come slap me. I said, slap you, sir? And then another guy, hi, I'm a white man from Denver. You want to slap a white man? Come slap me. I said, you sadomasochistic fool, slap yourself. I'm busy. I thought I was going to have to come get y'all, get a coalition, and go have a slapping good time, because they wanted to be slapped all over the country. Then the next morning, I got up, and I said, I promised this conservative radio station that I was going to come on their program and talk about the reparations rally. So when they heard the remark, you can hear them, you know, like, they said, good morning, Councilman. Like, yeah, we got you now. So how you doing? I'm like, great. I feel great. What a great time to be alive. And they said, so how was the rally? Awesome. Rally was off the hook. It was great. I said, well, we have a quote here I want you to respond to. For my black mental health, I'm going to slap the first white man I see and tell him it's a black thing. Did you say that? I said, absolutely. They said, Councilman? I said, yes, that's what I said. And they said, well, what do you mean by that? So just to mess with them, I said it was a case of oratorical improvisation and black hyperbole. He said, what? I said, oratorical improvisation and black hyperbole. He said, what's a black hyperbole? I said, you don't know what a hyperbole is? I said, a hyperbole is a figure of speech. You know, you have metaphors, you have similes, and you have hyperbole. A hyperbole is a gross exaggeration. He said, I know what a hyperbole is. I said, well, why'd you ask me? He said, what's a black hyperbole? I said, oh, when I was growing up and I got on my mother's last nerve on Sunday, she said, I will slap you into Tuesday. Now, that didn't mean Monday wasn't going to happen. That's a hyperbole. He said, well, tell me another one. I said, well, my mother said, I brought you in this world. That's not my mama's commitment to murder. That's a hyperbole. It's a hyperbole. So he said, so you were playing around. I said, no, my mama wasn't playing with me, and I'm not playing with you. We need some reparations. But brothers and sisters, I make light of some of this, but we're living in critical times. We're in a state of emergency. We have to come together. And black men, you have to stand up and be leaders. You have to get rid of any fear. You cannot fear anybody. Your backbone, your spine has to be straight. And just like y'all get bad with each other, get bad with your oppressors. Get bad with those who put you in a bad situation. And I'm telling you, this is our time to rise up. This is our time to be the men that can lead our communities. I'm telling you, they know the gig is up. They know it's your time to rule, your time to lead, your time to be in powerful positions. And once you realize that, they're in big trouble. So I say, be like Harriet Tubman. Yes, she's a woman, but have her courage. Harriet Tubman was able to put a Bible in one hand, enslaved, in a horrible situation. She used to black out all the time. She said, I'm getting up out of here. I'm walking to freedom. She walked from the south to the north, walked, came back 19 times. She put a Bible in one hand, a gun in the other hand. I'm going to pray for some of you. The rest of you better not turn around because I ain't losing a passenger. Came back 19 times. If that were me, I'm telling you right now, the first 15 that I got out on the first trip, whoever didn't come on that trip, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we 15 are free at last. I would not have gone back 19 times and freed over 400. Give Harriet Tubman a hand clap. That's a bad sister. Nelson Mandela, brothers. Nelson Mandela. That's a brother with spine, with spirit. 27 years in prison. Who would have thought he would go from the prison to the presidency? Somebody had to tell him in his 25th year, Nelson, you're not going to make it. You might as well quit. You might as well let the system know that you'll denounce violence, so they'll let you out. He said, no, I'll die before I do that. 2 years later, Nelson Mandela was the president of South Africa. And Barack Obama, with all his shortcomings, who would have thought in your lifetime a black man would be the president of the United States of America? We did that. We got him in there, even though they forget sometime. Who would have thought that in our lifetime we would see a black governor? But you know what? That's good that we had those first black breakthroughs, but now we got to get some real black people. Real, those who are not afraid. We don't need a first black here, a first black there. That's a good move, because I like to see the two black girls running around the White House, tearing up the rug. Like to see Michelle up in there, the baddest, brilliant, beautifulest first lady this nation has ever had, this world has ever seen. Those are proud, proud moments. But now we got to get real. No more symbolism. No more people in positions to make us proud. No more first black this, first black that. We want the black community taken care of. We want to make sure that progress to us is not a black face in a high place that's going to espouse the same policies as the white politicians before them. That's neo-colonialism. We don't want neo-colonialism. We want freedom. We want liberation. We want our independence. And I'm saying now is the time for us to rise up, take our stand. And in New York City, this is the place to do it. A $63 billion budget. Nobody should be hungry. No Native Americans should be on a reservation. There shouldn't be no ghettos. Don't build no Yankee Stadium. You got money to build the Mets Stadium and the Nets Arena, and then you shut down our daycare centers. You shut down our senior centers. You shut down our youth centers. You don't want to tax the rich, but you want to tax CUNY and raise tuition. We're paying too much for textbooks. Textbooks should be free. Tuition should be free. Transportation should be free. Health care should be free. And I'm telling you, these are not pie-in-the-sky ideas. The money is there. I've seen the budgets. If you just raise revenue through taxing the rich, you could have $12 billion a year, and it only affects 63,000 people in the state, those who are making $500,000 or more. They won't be hurt if you raise their tax 5%. And we can get $12 billion, take the 9 to balance the budget, and we won't have to cut all of these services, shut down all of this stuff. And Barack Obama, if you got $800 billion for those crooks on Wall Street, they shouldn't have been bailed out. They should have been looking for bail money to get out of jail because they are crooks. You got money for them. You got money for wars in Iraq. Don't transfer the war from Afghanistan, from Iraq to Afghanistan. Send them drones, unmanned aircrafts over to Pakistan. They ain't never did nothing to us. And don't give Israel carte blanche. Israel could do anything they want. Murdering Palestinians. Murdering, don't get quiet on Israel. Nobody's going to get you. You can talk about Israel. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. As soon as you talk about Israel, they ain't calling me no anti-Semite. First of all, the Semites are you. That's another session. But anyway, Israel participates in state-sponsored terrorism. They stole the land from the Palestinians, and they need to give it back. It is that simple. So we're living in a time where we can rise up. Look at Africa. Zimbabwe, a lot of people have some problems with Mugabe. One thing he's doing good, taking the land back from the white man who stole it from him. Nelson Mandela and them didn't take the land back here. 70 to 80% of the land in South Africa is still owned by whites. Mugabe took his back. He's a bad guy. May have some contradictions, but I tell you one thing, the Africans got their land back when, what's his name, Ian Smith was the head of Rhodesia, came here, murderer of black people. They welcomed him. Mugabe takes the land back and he's a terrorist. He's a horrible human rights violations. So brothers and sisters, read up on your history, stay contemporary, understand what the contemporary politics, what's going down, and do what we need to do. This is the greatest time to be alive. We have a great opportunity to rise up in this city and have our fair share by taking power. The only thing they understand is power. When you get power, you don't have to beg. You don't have to shuck and jive and shuffle. You don't have to write the best proposal and beg for money. When you have power, you can make sure that we get our fair share in our lifetime. God bless you, and power to the people.
Councilmember Charles Barron. Let's give him a round of applause. Let's give a round of applause for all our panelists.